Welcome to the Strategic Brief. Today we're diving into a powerful mix of geopolitical tinder, fragile post-conflict societies, a new scramble for influence in Africa, high-tech air power, the geopolitics of nuclear energy, rare earth resource wars, and the high-stakes push for peace in Ukraine. These are the lines that really define power in 2025, and you're right here where they all intersect.
Excellent.
So that's a lot to cover. Our mission in this deep dive is to, synthesize all of this and find the patterns connecting these events. For you, the learner, we want to give you a shortcut to understanding the real operating system of global power. What connects a strongman in the Balkans to the global battle for electrons? All right, let's unpack that. Let's start in Europe with Bosnia. It's been 30 years since the Dayton Accords. The sources we have use a pretty describing term saying the peace has calcified.
Calcify is a perfect word for it. It means the temporary structure that was meant to stabilize things.
Right, the transitional government.
Exactly. It's hardened into this permanent, deeply dysfunctional arrangement. You still have these intense ethno-political divisions and a really weak central state that's basically on life support from international groups.
So if the international community, the EU and NATO, are supposed to be the protectors, how are these local strongmen able to push for more and more autonomy?
Because there's a critical external player, Russia.
Yeah.
They remain a quiet but very powerful influence.
Oh.
They use a strategy of, let's call it, low-cost, high-leverage disruption. They'll support ethno-nationalist leaders, especially in Republika Srpska.
People like Milorad Dodik.
Precisely. They provide political backing, maybe some funding for local media. Their goal isn't necessarily another war, but just to keep the threat of fragmentation alive. It keeps the West distracted.
Okay, let's pivot from the Balkans to Africa, which is becoming this new front line. The sources suggest a major paradox is unfolding. Washington seems to be retreating.
It does. You see these dramatic aid cuts, a thinner diplomatic presence. It really leaves an opening.
And who's filling that vacuum?
Well, if the U.S. is pulling back, China and Russia are aggressively doubling down. Africa is now the epicenter for this global battle over influence and critical resources.
So what makes their approach so much more effective on the ground? Is it just that they don't attach political conditions?
That's a huge part of it. I mean, Western engagement often comes with demands for governance reform, human rights.
Strings attached.
Exactly.
Yeah.
China, on the other hand, they focus on rapid investment. They build the roads, the railways, the ports that connect mineral regions directly to the coast for export. They're not offering aid. They're implementing a strategy to future-proof their own industries.
That's a great transition from geology and influence into, well, high-tech air power. Let's talk about the F-15EX Eagle II. The really surprising insight here is its new role.
Its new identity, really. It's not just a better fighter. It's being pitched as the quarterback for drone swarm.
Oh, quarterback.
Yeah.
So it's directing the plays.
It's a fundamental shift in what air superiority even means. The F-15EX is basically a massive flying data processing center. Its power isn't just in the missiles it carries, but its ability to coordinate, hundreds of unmanned aircraft at once.
And that's why it has a two-person crew, a pilot, and a systems officer. The second person isn't a weapons officer in the old sense.
Not at all. That person's job is pure cognitive warfare. They are managing the entire unmanned ecosystem. It really confirms a new strategic truth. The plane that thinks best, that controls the network, is the one it will dominate.
Control of the network. That brings us to our next flashpoint. The battle for electrons, the geopolitics of nuclear energy. The sources frame this as a new Cold War.
And it is. It's a foundational struggle. If you have reliable energy, you have economic stability,
Yeah.
and that gives you immense political leverage.
And the U.S. is focusing its strategic funding on what exactly?
On advanced nuclear technologies, mostly small modular reactors, or SMRs.
What's the significance, though, the small part?
It's not just the size, it's that they can be factory-built and deployed relatively quickly. That makes them ideal for developing nations or even remote military bases. It just lowers the barrier to entry.
But the sources are clear that the U.S. is playing catch-up. China and Russia are already out there exporting reactors.
And that head start is a huge problem. Because when China or Russia provides a country with its entire nuclear infrastructure,
The reactor, the fuel, the maintenance.
everything, they are locking in a political and diplomatic relationship that can last for 50 years. So whoever wins this race isn't just selling power plants. They're shaping global allegiances for the next half-century.
So we've covered control of energy, the electron. But just as vital is control over the building blocks of technology, the minerals. This takes us to the rare earth resource wars, specifically Myanmar's Kachin state.
Right. And we're talking about minerals you've probably never heard of, like dysprosium and terbium.
Not household names, no.
But they are absolutely essential. They're used in the high-tech magnets for everything from guided missiles to the motors in electric vehicles and wind turbines.
And China has dominated the supply for a long time.
For decades. And now the U.S. is making a very high-stakes push to create its own independent supply chain.
But the region itself is incredibly volatile. You've got rebel groups, the military junta, massive environmental damage from the mining. It sounds like a huge risk.
It is a profound geopolitical gamble. It just shows you how desperate the search for these independent supply chains has become.
But it's worth noting the sources also contrast this with diplomatic successes in the region.
They do. They point to Malaysia's role as a mediator in the border conflict between Thailand and Cambodia.
And what's the lesson there?
That geopolitics isn't always about confrontation over resources. Sometimes skilled diplomacy, using economic leverage, the carrots and sticks, can actually stabilize a region. It shows that peace itself is a strategic asset.
Okay, let's turn to our final and maybe highest stakes scenario, the push for peace in Ukraine. The sources talk about a leaked 28-point peace proposal.
Yes, one reportedly brokered with Trump's backing. And it could force Kiev into some incredibly tough concessions.
What kind of concessions?
Well, it reportedly requires territorial recognition, which could mean ceding occupied land.
Wow.
And also mandated reductions in Ukraine's military strength, plus constitutional limits that would prevent NATO membership. It's a package designed to give Russia tangible gains for a ceasefire.
So what is President Zelensky's position in all this? He's walking a tightrope.
An incredibly fine line. He said he's open to honest work on peace, which signals a willingness to engage.
But
he's also warned that any deal must preserve the country's dignity and sovereignty. So you have the promise of ending the war, but the peril of basically institutionalizing Russia's gains.
So we've covered 6 critical flashpoints. Let's try to synthesize all this. What's the fundamental takeaway that connects that rare earth miner in Myanmar to the nuclear exporter in Moscow?
It all comes back to those 3 pillars of control we talked about at the start.
Yeah.
The strategic map for 2025 is being defined by who controls the inputs.
Okay.
You see a struggle for resource control in Africa and Myanmar. Then there's influence control in Bosnia and Ukraine, where outside powers use instability or diplomacy to get what they want.
And the technology side, the F-15EX and the SMRs.
That's about future-proofing your power. The nuclear race is a contest for energy control locking in those long-term political dependencies. And the F-15EX is all about data control.
Acknowledging that information wins wars now.
Exactly. So the most crucial takeaway for you, the listener, is to look at headlines and see the underlying struggle. Who is trying to secure energy or economic advantage or diplomatic leverage? That is how you decode what's really happening.
It's clear. The new definition of sovereignty, or maybe vulnerability, lies in controlling the electron, controlling the data stream, and controlling the mineral supply line.
Absolutely. If you control the inputs, you control the outputs. And that control determines who sets the rules for the whole system.
This raises a really important question for you, the learner, to think about. How does this increasing reliance on complex, data-driven systems, like an F-15EX coordinating a massive drone swarm, change the threshold for starting a conflict? If your success relies entirely on the integrity of real-time information that could be spoofed or compromised or just wrong, what happens when that data fails on a fully automated battlefield? Does the massive risk of catastrophic failure make the stakes too high for anyone to ever push the button? If this briefing helped you understand the deeper patterns behind today's headlines, please like, share, and subscribe. Join our community of people who don't just follow global news, we decode it. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to exploring more strategic flashpoints with you in the next episode of the Strategic Brief.